All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Make sure that we have a quorum. I'm Don Hall, and we have Beth Burns here. It looks like Mr. Springer, you're on, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And Mr. Cordero. All right, we're missing Mr. Cordero. Mr. Spivey, are you here? Okay. Well, we've got three, so that's a quorum. And we'll call the meeting to order. We have a motion to adopt the agenda.
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
All right, Ms. Burns has made a motion,
Second.
and Mr. Springer has made a second. We'll do a roll call vote since we're by video. Ms. Burns
Aye.
and Mr. Springer.
Aye.
And that's unanimous. Item 3.1, the consider K8 project manager contract.
All right, good afternoon, Board. Per our last communications, Mr. Jonathan Best from Bar and Bar is asked to appear in front of the Board and have a conversation about the proposed scope and the agreement as presented. As you will see in the Board packet, and as I previously shared with you, there were revisions that the Board requested at its last meeting about the Bar and Bar agreement. Mr. Best is in possession of those, but would like to talk to the board about how to move forward with this agreement. And so at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Best to come forward.
Morning, Board.
Good morning.
We just wanted to, I know a lot of times you do everything in open board sessions and just wanting to have a conversation to kind of understand, one, why our number is our number, two, kind of what that means to you, and three, kind of why we did do a credit for the month of September, because we understand you guys wanted to put a contract in effect in October, gave you that credit, and kind of going through like the not to exceed contract, and this is just not a lump sum that we're going to get that amount of money. It's a hourly kind of rate where we have to charge hours, it has to get approved, and then we submit a bill, and then if we don't make it to that not to exceed number, then we give all that money back to the board, and that can be put in the contract if you want that, but that's kind of how these work. But based off of kind of the revisions that were sent back to our team, our scope kind of increased, with some mandates on being at inspections, being there for third-party inspections and building inspections, having to be there for the weekly OAC and board meetings, having to present to the board weekly, which is fine. We don't want to increase in scope. We just kind of want to hold the not to exceed. And I think a good way we can do it is work with the board and facilities director on forecasting. Hey, this is where we're at this month. This is where we think we're going to be the next couple of months. So you kind of know where we're at, but also, working with you to get caught up to speed because, I know the next item on the agenda is GMP2, so there's a lot of submittals and things that we will have to get going on kind of early and put a lot of time into up front, and then kind of how these things work is you'll see them accelerate, then they kind of decelerate like a bell curve, then towards the end they pick back up. So that's kind of why we asked to hold the number, give you the credit for the month of September, and then kind of stay there as a not to exceed of. The new number will be $512,162,000. Stay there, and then upon approval, kind of forecast the first 3 months of what we're thinking and keep you with a 3-month look ahead on those costs.
We had Mr. Cordero came in, but there he goes, back. Okay. You have any more? You want to see if we got any questions or any of that?
Can't answer any questions from anyone on the board.
All right. Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Chair, if I can, I know Ms. Burns wanted this in the open meeting, so I'll let her go first.
Okay.
Actually, Mr. Springer, it appeared to me that you were the one who had all the concerns about the contract, so if you'd like to go ahead.
Sure. Sir, if you could, can you tell the board, can you advise the board how many people you're gonna have on the job site?
So that number go up and down. So in the beginning, we're going to have about 3 to 4 people working on this project. So we'll have people reviewing submittals, because as you're approved as GMP, contractor, design builder sending submittals over, we need to review it to make sure what are on the plans and spec are going into your project. Then also each month, as you get in pay apps, we'll have a person that's for project control. So they're going to control the cost. They're going to be looking at the cost, looking at the allowances, evaluating, do we need to put this allowance in? Is this not an allowance? Is this something that may have been missed? And so that's something that we have to advise you on. So at any given time, Mr. Springer, we'll have 2 to 4 people on the project. And also a 5th person as we're going into the closeout of QA/QC as we're doing those inspections, wall closeout. So when we get the rough end, we're going to come through all those wall closeout. They're going to be photographed. They're going to be camera documented. We're going to do all of those things to make sure. So if an outlet isn't wired correctly, we're not spending time opening up the walls. We can go right back to that video, see it, and you have that data. So a total of 5, but anywhere from 2 to 5, just depending on what phase of the project we're in.
Okay, so daily, how many of the 2 of the 5 are gonna be, or the 1 of the 5 are gonna be on the site?
We'll have 2 people on site. They may not be there daily, but definitely we'll have 2 people there 2 days a week. You have your OAC meetings, and that's a day, and then we'll have a second day. So usually we'll, get together with the design builder and the design team for the day before the OAC, then you have the day of the OAC, and then, we're still working on the project. They may not be on site daily, but we'll still be working on the project. But we're definitely going to have 2 people 2 times a week for the duration of the project.
Okay.
Some weeks it could be 5 people, Mr. Springer. 5 days. Some weeks it could be 2 or 3, but definitely a minimum of 2 days.
Definitely 2 days with 2 people, or two days with 1 person? Can you go into a little more detail or explain that?
I think at the beginning, we'll have 2 days of definitely 2 people, and it may be 3 or 4 days because, we got submittals and we got things we're going to have to get approved and looked at and come back and talk to you as the board about. But it will definitely be 2 days, 2 people for 2 days a week, full-time on site.
Two days full-time on site?
Yes.
Is it 2 days, or is it full-time?
No,
On
2
site.
2 days full-time on site.
Okay. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around 1 or 2 people paying $500,000. That's where my hiccup is.
Well, the number is not fully $500,000. It's based off of what we bill. So what we'll do is we'll bill you based off of what people work. It's not necessarily we're going to get $500,000. This contract is not to exceed the $500,000. We may only get to $300,000, and that other $200,000 goes back to the board. So it's not a lump sum amount that we're automatically receiving. And what I don't want to do is we lower the amount, let's call it 375 or 300, 350, and then I have to come back in front of the board because we've exceeded the hours based off of our scope of work, and then we have to ask for more money. That's a difficult conversation.
And in my opinion, I think you should have to come back to the board to ask for more money. If there's good reason, it should be able to be justified. Would you agree with that?
I agree with we could do it that way, but I've done quite a few of these with several school systems and municipalities, and it's never a good conversation when we have to come back in front of the board and ask for more money versus me telling the board at the end of the job, hey, we saved you $100,000 of this not to exceed contract. Because what we don't want to happen is, let's just say we have to come back in front of the board and ask for more money, there could be a different board and then they don't approve it and we're halfway through the project and, you know, essentially our contract ends. So that's why we're kind of saying, you know, it could be explicitly put out, this is not to exceed. We have to forecast the hours. We have to let you know what we're billing and where we're at. And we just feel like based off of our professional experience, this is a good number to hold as a not to exceed.
Okay, so what number are we at right now?
With the credit of the month of September, $512, $512,000, $162,000.
Okay, so if you can carry the project halfway, that would be 200 some change, right? And that should carry you to what month in the, of the project in year?
That would carry us, so we're saying now till December 27. That would carry you to around the beginning of 2026. Because it would be like a year and a half left. Let's just call it, we're at a year and a half, so.
I would propose to the board that we cut it by 100,000 to see where we are, in case we're greater than the halfway point.
I think that's right. So basically drop it down to about $412,000.
Yes, sir, not to exceed, and then if you need more money, sir, you just come back to the board and they'll either approve it or they won't.
So I guess to do this, there would have to be a motion with that amount in it. Is that right, Mr. McPherson?
Yes, the board would have to approve that amount for the contract and then, you know, approve it subject to finalizing the legal review on my end, which is, you know, it doesn't currently say that, so I'm gonna have to revise it for it to say that. And, you know, then if, you know, that also means that, you know, I would assume Jonathan's gonna have to revise his schedule to make that
Yep.
fit the number.
We can revise the numbers. I think that would be fair. You know, we want to get going and get to work, and I know it's a critical point in the project. You know, I think that's fair. I just think that, you know, in the event we have to come back to the board, I would let the board know we would have the backup and the justification why if we needed those additional funds.
Does that make sense to the board from my perspective, the putting it together with the new number? If that's what the board chooses to do.
All right.
I understand it.
Okay.
Assuming Mr. Springer's making a motion, I'll second, and I just want to make sure, Mr. McPherson, you've got the motion down at the amount.
Yes, sir. Assuming that Mr. Springer is making the motion.
Was there a motion?
I don't know that there's been a motion yet, Mr. Cordero.
No, I just asked, the motion would need to include the new amount.
Yes, sir.
Right, okay.
And I can, Mr. Cordero, I'll restate the motion once it's made. That way everybody's real clear on what they're authorizing.
Brandon, get your mic.
This one right
Oh,
here.
you're using, never mind.
Thank you, sir.
I
Mr.
was
Springer, do you want to go ahead?
looking at the desk one.
You talking to me, Mr. Cordero?
Yeah, you,
Yeah, I can't remember the amount. We may need to ask the gentleman from the company to remind us of the amount.
Mr. Cordero, it's Mr. McPherson, it's $412,162. It's 412,162. Mr. Best, that's 100,000 off of the number you quoted earlier.
Yes.
so it's 412, what was the amount?
162.
Okay. All right. So Would someone like to make that motion?
I make a motion to, re-amend the amount on the contract per what Mr. McPherson has stated in the verbiage he used, for approval.
All right, that amount.
I'll second, Mr. President.
Yep, that amount would be 412,162. Right?
That's right. So I'll restate that motion for the board. Motion to approve the bar and bar contract for project management of the new K-8 school in the amount of $412,162, subject to legal review. And that's a motion by Mr. Springer and a second by Mr. Cordero.
Right. All right, we'll go down the list then. Mr. Springer
Aye.
and Mr. Cordero.
Aye.
All right, and Ms. Burns.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Thank you. And next item. Uh, 3.2, the GMP.
All right, good morning, Chair Mr. Hall, Vice Chair Ms. Burns, members of the board, Dr. Breelove. Here to present to you GMP number 2 for approval of a contract, GMP number 2 with Bordeaux. This GMP number 2 is not to exceed in the amount of $1,113,121,434. Since the original contract in October of 2023, there has been many of meetings and design development that has happened over the course of the past year. These items have included the added of a few additional services, approval of GMP number 1, SDs, deliverables of 100% design documents that had come before the board and in July. And since then, Bordeaux has advertised for bids, hold a pre-bid conference, and had bid package openings number 1, 2, and number 3. Pender County Schools presents this GMP number 2 for approval in this amount of $113,121,434. This will bring the overall contract value of the new K-8 to $142,208,776. The costs that exceed GMP 1 and GMP number 2 are the pre-construction contract, additional services 1 through 6, technology, voice and IP equipment, security, FF&E, commissioning, utility services, playground equipment. Other allowances totaling $6,781,932 are design build allowances as identified in the attachment on page 8. Some of these design build allowances include sports sliding, wetland mitigation fees, elevator use, and several others listed in the attachment. It's my recommendation that Pender County, that the board approves GMP number 2 so we can get it to the county for their October 7th meeting and construction can continue. Does the board have any questions?
I've got one. If things like playground equipment, for example, does that fall under us or would that fall under Bordeaux? I think it's under us, isn't it? Isn't that a separate?
That cost,
This is Ben. Oh, sorry about that.
No.
go ahead, Ben.
Yep. What was that?
Yeah, this is Ben with Bordeaux Construction,
Sure.
Ben Warren. So yes, we're carrying a playground allowance of $650, and Russ, the number that you mentioned, the 142 million, actually would not. That's above our contract amount. That would be the number that includes all these allowances, including the playground equipment. that Mr. Hall just referenced.
Correct.
So currently, we're carrying that allowance of 650,000 for the playground equipment, and it's to be determined whether we procure it or whether Pender County Schools does. It's been a conversation item.
Well, that's so all the things that he just listed, I was just using the playground for an example, but everything that Mr. Reganis just listed, that are here, it sounds like that some of these things are optional, some are not, for Bordeaux. Am I correct about that?
Yes, sir. We're available to assist, however, whatever makes it easiest. As it stands, though, it's yet to be determined who will procure the playground equipment or,
Okay.
the other items you mentioned, like some of the, FF&E, things like that. They are they're owner allowances. So there's no markup or any of that being applied to those figures.
I think it's just that if you have a set, like, okay, you can spend up to this amount, some people have concerns over, okay, well, do you really need to spend this whole amount, or, are you just, you can do it because the number's there, or, in other words, like, what incentive, if you find a way to cost save, how could it benefit all of us, I guess is where I'm trying to go with this.
Sure, and that's where we can help. I mean, for FF&E, for example, or playground equipment, getting multiple proposals from vendors, so you have a pretty good gauge on, the value that you're getting. These are just budgets anyway. They're not being carried in our contract. They're just allotments for Pender County Schools to procure these things. So, I think you get multiple proposals, and that's going to be the best way to know kind of what you're getting, bang for the buck,
Okay. Now I've had some constituents ask me about things like a GMP, like, well, this seems like a blank check, or it's all about cost savings, I guess is where I'm trying to go with this. But, sometimes you don't know exactly what the cost is going to be till you get into it. But, okay. Well, thank you. Any other questions?
Well, the only thing I was going to say is I was looking at the subcontractor allowance log, and I guess my question is, or my assumption is, there are contingencies already built into those prices, correct? So in case, say, someone is outside doing some utility work and they run across some soil or something, or rocks or something that they have to contend with, that price is already has a contingency built in. So there's a good possibility that the price will not be as high as
Correct.
what we're seeing here. Okay.
Correct. Ben, do you want to elaborate on Ms. Burns?
Sure. So we try to anticipate, from experience of similar jobs and so on, things that can come up. And so we've tried to account for, for those items. And if we could go through examples, but just looking at the log, electrical has, the addition of an additional smoke detector or receptacle or fire alarm, pull station, exit light, so on, right? Because the authority having jurisdiction may come in and say, hey, we need to add X, Y, and Z, just for example. And so the hope would be that we've done a good job here identifying these things and that there's an adequate allowance to account for them. And we cannot use these allowances unless there's a change order done against them, such that at the end of the work, we will be able to credit any remaining allowances back to the owner. That's the idea. And that's normally what happens. You try to be conservative and not have allowances that you're going to blow through, and then ultimately they would be credited back and go into the owner contingency, and it would be up to the board what to do with those remaining funds.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And a lot of times, I want to ask questions like that because I know that we have parents out there listening to what's going on with this project.
Correct.
And sometimes they, you know, if you see a number, you also need to know what's behind that number. So every once in a while, you're going to hear me ask a question. So, but thank you, Mr. Warren. I appreciate your explanation on that.
Yeah, thank you, Ben, and thank you, Ms. Burns and Mr. Hall for identifying and clarifying those differences in the estimated costs and the ones that are in the allowance. Thank you.
But we just don't want, it's like, it says, okay, your budget is $100. Well, we don't want to incentivize anyone to spend
All 100.
$99.99 of it just because it says you can.
Yes, sir.
That's the point I think I'm trying to make, but I wish there was a way that we could incentivize people working on this to you know, just to look for opportunities. I guess is a good way to put it, but I think you get my
Mr. Hall,
gist.
if I could speak to that, there is a design build contingency in the project of 3%. So there's an owner contingency and there's a design build contingency. At the end of the project, there is a 60-40 contingency savings split. And the idea of that is it incentivizes us to do our best not to spend any of these funds,
All right.
right? Because we have skin in the game. And so
Yep.
the same goes for these allowances. I mean, the way we finish a project strong and the way everybody feels good about the job that's been performed is when we credit back money at the end of the project. So I can assure you that, you know, there'll be team decisions on any money that gets spent,
All right.
and we will act as fiduciary.
All right. Well, when constituents ask, I have to ask. That's how this works. So,
Absolutely. And another layer to this was also the project management that we're bringing on board, potentially. And I also felt that was yet another way of just having another set of eyes on the project while it's being constructed is going to do nothing except help us. And now I'm pleased today that we are finally working toward that.
Yes, ma'am.
all right. Any other questions? All right. Do we have a motion concerning this GMP?
I make a motion to approve.
All right. Ms. Burns has made a motion. Do we have a second? All right, there
I'll
is. Okay, Mr. Springer has made a second. We'll go down the list. Ms. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Springer,
Aye.
and Mr. Cordero.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Looks like we are down to closed session. Ms. Burns is going to make a motion when we get the paragraph pulled up here. Longest motion ever.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. I move that the board enter into closed session subject to advice from the attorney pursuant to NC General Statute 143-318.11A1 and A6 to prevent disclosure of confidential personnel information under GS 115C-319 and to consider matters relating to personnel matters. The board will also enter into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with the board's attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege.
All right, Ms. Burns has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Springer has made a second. All in favor say aye.
Brent says aye.
All right.
Mr. Greer, aye.
All right, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Ms. Burns
We are
said
in
aye.
closed session. All right, we are back in open session. Can we have a motion to approve the HR report?
I make a motion to approve the HR report.
All right, Ms. Burns has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Springer has made a second. And the list, Ms. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Springer,
Mr. Springer votes aye.
and Mr. Cordero.
Aye.
And that's unanimous. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have a second as well? All right, Ms. Burns is making a second. All in favor, say aye.
Brett
Aye.
says aye.
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous. Thank you.